I've been hearing for 5 years now about a Flashpoint movie.
He's pretty slow for a speedster.
Yeah, and
Dick Grayson.
Booster Gold.
The Batman.
I mean, The Rock has been casted for 13 years already, I think.
Barbara Gordon.
Green Lantern.
Blue Beetle.
Just give us those movies.
That's a tough one.
So is there anything on that list that excites you, one or more? Let us know. I want to turn to our next question, which I think is going to be a little bit of fun, sort of lift the tone just a bit. But which unproduced DCEU projects would you like to see WB prioritize? And before you get your answers in line, I just want you to know that the list of unproduced DCEU properties or, IP that they've been talking about bringing to the screen is long. So, we've got everything from Batgirl to Blackhawk, Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, Deadshot, Deathstroke, Gotham City Sirens. It seemed for a minute that the PR machine at WB or some intrepid leaker within their organization just made it his business that every time he or she, I should say, just made it their business that every single time there was a meeting, he just checked the trash bin. Oh, what did they talk about? Oh, yeah, I'm going to leak it. It's in development. So I just have felt personally a little frustrated to hear that so many of these things like Nightwing and Static Shock are sort of in the works. And then a couple of weeks later, they sort of go away and you don't hear any more discussion about it. So I'm going to give WB and DC the benefit of the doubt and say that some of these things are still in development and that they still might happen. And I want to turn to the champions, frankly, and, see what it is off of that list of unproduced properties that they would be excited to see, or they feel that it's a good direction for the DCEU to go in. I'm going to start the discussion with Taylor.
That's a tough one because there are so many of them that have been mentioned and talked about. And there are some exciting ones that have actually been formally announced. Of course, the next one, I believe the only one they have coming out in 2021 is The Suicide Squad, which I think a lot of people are really excited about. But if I had to pick one, I would pick someone that has some longevity to it. So, like, how cool would it be to see multiple movies where Dick Grayson becomes Robin and then becomes Nightwing, or Barbara Gordon becomes Batgirl and then becomes Oracle? Something that you could stretch out in a long arc, like, I hate to go back again, but like the MCU does. So I'd like to be a character like that, something that they could build on.
That's a great answer. I'd be very excited to see a Robin transformation into Nightwing or any one of his many identities out there, just to follow the character's evolution. So that being said, thank you for that answer, Taylor. I want to turn to Stanton to see if there's anything on the unproduced list, the garbage bin list where they just So is there anything on that list that excites you, one or more? Let us know.
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna throw out a couple here. One is Booster Gold. You mentioned that one briefly, and I think the concept of this is very unique. Something you haven't really seen people do. But just to give, I'm not a super pro at it, so anybody listening, you're probably gonna know more than I am. But essentially, this is a character who, is able to see what other heroes are going to do. Or I'm sorry, he's from the future. He's able to see what they did, and then take that and do it for himself. So he basically steals what other heroes have done, does it himself, and then winds up looking like the hero himself, which I just think that's awesome. That's just a fun concept you can play around. He's not really a hero. He's kind of he's a thief, but he comes in and he does the right thing. He technically came in and did the right thing. He just stole everybody else's cred for doing it. So I think that's a fun concept to play around with. I think they should definitely go ahead with that. The other one is Green Lantern. Just throwing out Marvel just for a second, just for context. They've had a lot of cosmic stuff, but they haven't really had a cosmic hero yet. We've seen a little bit with Captain Marvel, but she spent most of her time on Earth, at least in the first movie. We've seen a little bit with Thor. We've gotten a little bit of cosmic stuff with him. But we haven't gotten to Nova or Silver Surfer or characters like that who are main cosmic heroes. So I think they've got a really good chance to take Green Lantern, somebody who's definitely a popular figure, who people would latch onto, and just run with that. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in the cosmos, and I think Green Lantern has a lot of potential that hasn't really been tapped into just in the market as a whole. The last thing I would just kind of caution, I really kind of want them to get away from bats for a while. I mean, I think so much of what they do is centered around Batman from Batman himself. Obviously, we're going to have multiple different versions of him, to Batwoman, to Joker, to Gotham spinoffs. There's just so much about bats. Just I would like them to just nothing. I like a Dick Grayson concept, that would be fine, but just take the bat down just a little bit, and then maybe promote characters like Booster Gold and Green Lantern. I'd like to see more of that.
Sounds good. I'm going to push back on a little bit of your response there. When you saw the Batman trailer, did you not get all the feels? I mean, how did you feel about that? I know it's more Batman. It's like, oh my God, another serving of ice cream when I didn't have dinner yet. But doesn't it look like a high quality release? What's your take on it?
It looks like a high quality release. I will not diminish this in any sort of way, but I do feel like it's my fifth scoop of ice cream, as you described it. I've kind of had
freeze.
I've kind of had enough ice cream at this point. I've seen Batman. I've seen him start. I've seen him end. I'm. It looks great. It does look great. If you're excited, especially if you're somebody who hasn't grown up with going all the way back to 1989's Michael Keaton Batman, and this is maybe like your second Batman or something like that, that I can't diminish your excitement for this at all. I've seen Batman for 30 years, man. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's a totally legitimate response. I just had to push back just a little bit there because some of the future Batman plans I'm hearing sound pretty interesting, even though there's a high quantity of them. But thanks for your answer on that, Stanton. I want to turn to our final champion on this topic, Grandmaster, unproduced DCEU projects that you think that they should just float right to the top.
I wanted to say what Art said. No more bets, because I've seen Batman also, well, for 40 years even. So that's done for me for now. It's the same thing like X-Men. Kevin Feige, please wait with bringing the X-Men to the MCU. Hey, Hamada, hold off with the Batman and push him a bit to the side. And I have just too little knowledge of comic book lore to give a informed and educated answer. I've been hearing for 5 years now about the Flashpoint movie. Apparently it's coming.
He's pretty slow for a speedster.
Yeah, and maybe he runs so fast he went to another Earth. But anyway, that's another story. But it's stuff like that. I mean, those projects like Black Adam. I mean, The Rock has been casted for 13 years already, I think. It's just give us those movies instead of just dropping a news line, or let those actors say, no, it's still happening on Twitter, while actually nothing happens. And that's the part that I want. Just give us your slate for the next few years instead of keeping everybody in the dark. Drop some names, see how people respond, and then maybe put it in production. I don't have specific projects I want to see. I want to see projects and what they are.
Understood. Taylor, you had a follow on?
Yeah, I agree completely, and I think they really do their best when they just go for it. Like, look at Aquaman. It made over $1 billion. They got a great director. They handed him a stack of comic books, apparently. Said he doesn't have to be brooding. Have a good time. Have him ride a giant seahorse. Have a octopus playing the drums. We don't care. Let's do this. And I wish they would do that with more characters.
Understood. So really great answers from the champions on this particular topic. I am all the way there when it comes to Booster Gold, as Stanton was talking about, because I think that gives you an opportunity to sort of pair up with Blue Beetle to get that buddy scenario that I think the DCEU could potentially benefit from if they want to go in a different direction. I also would be very excited to see a Green Lantern Corps movie. To be clear, not a Green Lantern movie, but Green Lantern Corps, where we have the sort of entire police force of the galaxy sort of spelled out for you there. There are lots of other properties that are not on their list of things that are in development, but I won't take the time to go there. That's perhaps another episode to talk about properties that they should do a deep dive into that no one in the executive leadership at WB is considering right now. So I want to ask a related question, just a quick take. We'll call this the lightning round to close the segment. We've talked about unproduced projects that we want to see come out of the DCEU leadership, but let's talk a little bit about the planned spin-offs that are coming out of HBO Max. So without even having released the Batman or without even having released the Suicide Squad, there is a Gotham City Police spinoff coming to HBO Max from the Batman, and then there's a Peacemaker spinoff coming out of the Suicide Squad to be featured on HBO Max. Are they jumping the gun? I mean, and let me put some context behind that, because when you have something like the Disney Plus shows, Marvel is carefully curating the characters that they pull out of the MCU. They know that there's fan demand for those characters. And I'm not just talking about silly culture wars amongst DC and Marvel. I'm talking about Loki is a hugely popular character. Makes sense. Let's bring him on to Disney Plus. Whether you think his arc is finished or not, a lot of fans love the character. But when you look at something like Peacemaker, or you look at something like a Gotham City Police Force sort of spinoff, that's coming to HBO Max without any sort of fandom dialogue around it. We haven't really seen anything out of those meetings. So executives, we imagine, sitting around a table unilaterally have made these decisions to do these spinoffs because they've seen outtakes or dailies or rough cuts that say, that Peacemaker and John Cena looks great. Give Gunn the series, right? And forgive me if I'm missing a certain angle here, but I want to just get the feeling in terms of the planning around these spinoffs. And I want to start with Grandmaster in terms of talking about HBO Max DCEU spinoffs.
Yeah, feels odd to me that all of a sudden they don't wait what the audience will say about certain characters or movies, and they already start planning the spin-offs. That's totally different from what they have done before. That could be a good thing. I mean, it could be they are confident enough in the product that it will work, and they have good ideas, and especially when it comes to the Suicide Squad and the Peacemaker, they have James Gunn involved, and well, you can say what you want about James Gunn, but he knows what he's doing. He has proven that with the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and the fact that Disney hired him back. So I think that has a lot of potential, and I'm actually looking forward to it. But yeah, I hope I get to see it.
Thank you for that, Grandmaster. I do really appreciate your solid thinking on this, as always. Stanton, do you want to field spinoffs, HBO Max spinoffs? How are you feeling about them?
I'm kind of like, just wait and see, like I am on most of this. I think it's perfectly fine to go ahead and plan without getting audience feedback necessarily, especially if it's a new character. I think they ran into trouble with that in their film division when they, started producing Justice League before they really knew how Batman versus Superman was going to work out. But in this case, it's a little different because it's not necessarily a sequel. It's, exploring a new character, and to whatever extent, it doesn't matter really how the Suicide Squad turns out. I think you can kind of go on with exploring a new character regardless. It'll be interesting to see how much the Peacemaker is involved in the Suicide Squad or how little he's involved, but I think it's okay to explore new characters regardless. But like I said, I'm just in a wait and see. I really don't know if this is more of an AT&T directive. Hey, you have to increase your output by X percentage, and this is just kind of the project that made the cut. I don't know. I'm hopeful that it's more of a thoughtful approach creatively, that they were looking at what they've got coming out and decided the best way to expand, the most interesting thing to explore from a creative standpoint was this character, and that's what they're doing. I'm also just a tiny bit concerned, and this is just because WB hasn't instilled any confidence in me, that some of this stuff may be a little stunt casting. Like, Rock's been around for a while, but maybe it's a little bit of a stunt cast. Cena's not a bad, Cena's not terrible. I've liked him in several different things, actually, so I think he's fine. But maybe it might be a bit of a stunt cast. I don't really know, but I'm cautious. I would just say cautiously optimistic. I think having a plan is better than what they've been doing, which was just staying until they turned out the lights in the bar and throwing darts at a dartboard you can't see with a lot of their projects. But I think maybe that I want to give them at least a little bit of credit that maybe this is a real plan from a creative point of view, and not just from an AT&T you've got to up your output by 100% sort of point of view. So
right,
we'll see.
Yeah, great answer, by the way, and it reminds me of the AT&T Investor Call and some of what I heard on there. So to put this into context, I'm just going to sort of wind this back, the discussion, just a little bit. AT&T is a telecom. Disney, as its direct competitor as far as DC and Marvel are concerned, is a media company. And I think the difference culturally can be seen very clearly in terms of how Bob Iger versus how John Stankey might think about things. One of the really big takeaways I got from the investor call is that AT&T is in a lot of debt, which is not unusual for a mega corporation, and no reason to think that they're going to drown and we're no longer going to have AT&T service. But they are in a lot of debt, and Stankey's mandates, I think, are really around laying off debt. They want to be fiscally responsible as a company, which makes sense for any corporation. And I think some of the mandates and the pressures that WB might be under come from AT&T in terms of, listen, we need you to produce as much as you can that would be very popular as far as the brand goes to help us pay down this debt. We really need the cash right now. So thinking your way out of all of these corners in terms of continuity or how to create a shared universe or all of these wonderful things you'd like to do, guess what? That's not really at the top of our list, guys. Why don't you just make some movies about these characters and make them good so that we can kind of take some of that excess profit and put it back into our coffers or pay down our debt. So bringing that to light, talking about that particular perspective, I know secondary goals for AT&T are, we need to create an emotional connection with our customers, right? And brands like DC allow them to do that, right? So it's very much, I just don't feel that there's storytelling first, but I'm ready to let any of the champions, or for that matter, anyone out there in Sakaar or anyone listening in the comments, just challenge me on the idea that AT&T really isn't focused so much on storytelling so much as they're trying to leverage their brands. But our final panelist, our final champion to talk about HBO spinoffs is going to be Taylor. And I know you're going to bring a lot to the discussion.
Well, no, I agree with you. They are trying to get as many people to subscribe to HBO Max as possible. That is the purpose. That is the marching orders they've been given. They haven't gotten me yet, and I have no intention of subscribing to HBO Max at this point. I don't care about any of the shows. I'm very much looking forward to the Suicide Squad in the movies. And I would probably like a Peacemaker series with John Cena. That'd probably be awesome. but that's not enough to get me to subscribe to HBO Max. And as far as all the rest go, Gotham PD, I've already got all 5 seasons of Gotham on DVD, and I'll just keep watching those. I don't want to see a even darker, even more violent, with a lot of F words thrown in, because that's what HBO does, version of Gotham. I don't need to see that. I don't need to see more stuff like Titans or Doom Patrol or all the other stuff that they already have over there. Because I think they'll go the dark route, because they still haven't completely learned that lesson yet, even though all the facts are in that, yes, Batman can be dark and brooding, but it does not work for everybody else. And it does not work it does not work to the same degree even with Batman when you put him in the same universe as the Flash and Superman. You have to lighten it up a little bit. But I think HBO, at least from everything I've read about the shows, is they're going to be the dark brooding corner of the DCEU, is going to be these spin-off shows. So no, I'm not interested in them at all. And like you said, the entire reasoning behind them, of course, is to make money, which is fine. Disney told Marvel Studios, make us money, and Marvel Studios is doing that too. It's the same thing. They're just doing it better. And that's where I'm at. One of you guys want to share your HBO subscription with me for free? I'll watch it, but that's it.
Indeed. Wow. So, a really compelling answer, a valid answer from Taylor in terms of he's not really interested, right? Like, it's not going to be the thing that draws him to HBO Max, these particular spinoff shows. And I think that really highlights how the difference to subscribe, it's different for every single fan in terms of where you're coming from. And the spinoff shows are not going to be an enticement sight unseen. So it's really interesting to get that perspective from the panel. So, closing out this segment where we've really talked a lot about performance, where we've talked about strategy, I just feel honored to be here talking to the guys and really getting all of these perspectives. So if you are listening out there in the audience, please hang in for our last segment of the show, where I ask the champions to put on their corporate fixer hats to look at the DCEU as if they were someone like Walter Hamada or John Stankey or someone within the hierarchy of the management of that company. We're going to try to break down what we think is, some of the biggest problems that DCEU might be having, and give the reins over to the champions to say, this is exactly what I think we need to do to fix things. So stay tuned, guys. Don't go anywhere. This last segment is probably not going to go the way that you think. So hang in there.